Hey, hi, and howdy, you bunch of fools. I, like many others, watched the Amazing Digital Circus finale earlier this week, and, unsurprisingly, I got things to say. While I'll be talking about my own thoughts and feelings throughout this ramble session, I'm mainly gonna be delving into why so many people seem to have a problem with the last episode of this show. I want to waltz through some arguments I've seen online, some problems I've heard other people have, and why I don't really agree with a lot of the complaints that I've been seeing on my social feeds for the past week. And yes, before you ask, this will be featuring many spoilers for the last act, so if you haven't seen it already, I do not advise you to listen to me talk from this point forward. Alright, where do I begin? Well, I feel like a good place to start would be the main problem people seem to have, and that is Jax, just like as a whole. The main thing people seem to dislike about the finale and even the broader show is everything to do with Jax. Jax as a character, Jax's arc, and Jax's seeming focus within the story, especially in the latter half. I've always found that last argument to be really weird though. Like, I get complaining about something like this if it's a sudden change or if a show switches to a focus on a niche side character halfway through, but from the beginning, Jax was being built up to be more central to the show than anyone else. The majority of interactions between characters involve Jax, and throughout the series, Jax's mysterious past and motives were being built up. Over time, it was being built up that there was a lot to Jax that we didn't know. Most of the other characters are pretty straightforward in what we know about them, or at least what we needed to know about them. Gangle has self-esteem issues, Zooble has a strong hatred for their own body, Kinger misses his wife, Kane has an obsession with perfection, and of course Ragatha's awful relationship with her abusive mother. These concepts are absolutely ones that can all be explored in any amount of depth, but for this story, the single episodes that really dive into them are all they really need. It gives the characters more depth, which allows us to connect to them more, while expanding their own personal worlds to the audience enough to see them as real people with real struggles. Jax's story is just more in depth. Someone who's as open as Ragatha is about her trauma will obviously get less focus than someone who specifically avoids telling other characters about their personal past. The audience knows what's going on with Ragatha. The audience doesn't know what's going on with Jax, which results in more screen time. Now, you're obviously allowed to dislike this structure, no one is forcing you to love this show, but a lot of the complaints I've been seeing kind of miss the point. There isn't anything wrong with a show focusing on a character more than the others. Jax is very closed off. Unpacking their trauma will take longer than exploring something like Kinger missing his wife, both because it's a simpler concept and because Kinger's more open about what he thinks. But I obviously must be missing something because the way the internet talks about it, you'd think that this show is exclusively about Jax. Like, did I miss a page? The other characters get plenty of focus, screen time, and development across the series. If they didn't, we wouldn't know jack shit about anyone other than Jax, which until the finale, it was the exact opposite. We barely knew anything about Jax until episode 9. We knew plenty about everyone else. What they were like before the circus, their interests, relationships, past history. We knew literally nothing about Jax until, well, episode 9. You know, the last episode of the show. Personally, I think it's fine if the last episode has a large focus. Keep in mind, not even an entire focus, but a partial focus on the character that we easily knew the least about. The character who's also been built up throughout the show to be someone who's more mysterious than everyone else and somebody who would need and deserves more attention because of that. I also think that Jax getting more focus is thematically appropriate. My friend actually came up with this while discussing the finale with me. Thank you, Jumbles, for letting me use this. But Jax shares the same traits as the majority of the cast. Jax and Zooble both have body issues. Jax masks their feelings just like Gangle. Jax misses Ribbit in the same vein as Kinger missing Queenie. Jax and Ragatha both have parental issues. And Jax is the same trait as Kane of wanting people to see them in a certain way. Jax, in a sense, is emblematic of every character within the show, while Pomni is more emblematic of the audience and the environment itself, being the key to these characters talking about these issues with each other, as well as being the sort of narrator that takes the audience through the circus. The more Pomni learns, the more we learn. It's a stand-in for us. But nope, fuck thinking about a show. I want my wholesome moments with my favorite little fictitious goobers. Look, this next bit is more so me speculating and going off of what I think and feel a decent amount of people are saying. Not everyone, mind you, but I feel like this entire situation has a very large crossover with how fandom culture can almost destroy actual criticism. Jack's having a larger focus, not even a larger focus, just more time allocated to them, makes sense for the plot. It makes sense for the story that Gooseworks is trying to tell. Learning every little micro moment about Zubal's past or any other side character is obviously not something that was necessary for the story itself. But I feel like a lot of people kind of ignore that just because they want their favorite character to be the focus. If my favorite character isn't the center of the finale, then it's bad, or at least not good. I'm doing a little air quotes thing. I think some people view this show, and everything they watch, actually, as more of a funnel for their fandom than an actual story or piece of art, and that's kind of sad. You can dislike the finale because it didn't have a 20-minute scene about Gangle. Not because I think that's a valid criticism, but because I literally can't stop you. But I think it's downright kind of foolish to think that side characters not getting the same amount of screen time, not even the same amount of development, just the same amount of screen time as one of the central characters is a valid critique. I feel like a lot of people don't understand how series work. They change, they grow, it's not just a straight line. I do think Jax was built up to be more important than the others from the beginning, but even if that wasn't true, imagine if someone got mad that Marie or Flynn from Breaking Bad didn't get the same amount of development or screen time as Walt. These are very obviously two completely different shows, so let's choose something a little more thematically tied in terms of fandom culture. There is a show that tried to squeeze in as many characters as possible in the first season. It tried balancing a myriad of different central characters, ideas, plotlines, and ended up not delivering fully on any of them because it had way too much stuff. No, but it's a close second. Hazbin Hotel tries to shovel in so much shit, so much fan service, little moments and individual character backstories and lore bits, that it's just way too overstuffed and leads to the main critique of the entire series being that the writing just isn't great. Hazbin feels like it's appealing to a fandom first and writing a narrative second, and I think that there's a lot of people that want Digital Circus to be that in theory, but in reality, they have it, and it's called Hazbin Hotel, and we know how people feel about that. Hazbin Hotel written by fans is Hazbin Hotel. The Amazing Digital Circus written by fans would be Hazbin Hotel. So, no. I do not think Jax gets too much screen time, development, or focus. The narrative calls for the allocated amount of screen time that was given to each character. All of the other characters get a shitload of backstory, exposition, character development, and ways they get through their own personal trauma. Jax is overall more interesting than the others in terms of what we didn't know. And above all else, not every character even needs the exact same amount of series time given to them. Side characters are allowed to exist. Is this people's first show or something? All of this leads into the other big issue I've seen surrounding the criticism of the finale, and that is Jax as a character. Now, I feel like there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the finale and the entire series is going for when it comes to how people should feel towards Jax. Jax is an asshole. Jax is mean. Nobody is refuting that, but the show shows the audience firsthand that Jax uses that mean-spirited nature as a shield to block others away because they're afraid to let people get close. They don't trust others, and when they get even a little close to other people, Jax pushes them away out of fear, which stems from their parental issues and how they came out as trans to their mother. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is a cop-out? Jax is mean, and having past trauma masking feelings doesn't make that okay. First off, I don't think it's a cop-out, and second off, I think people saying that potentially don't know what the point of Jax's character even is. Here, let me explain how I interpreted the situation. Jax pushing people away, at least to me, is endearing, in a sense. Not because I feel bad for the asshole, but I feel bad for the part of Jax that wants that bond, that connection, but is too scared to commit. They get so close with Pomni at episode 6, and Jax just throws it away like they did with Ribbit, which made the scene with Ribbit even more heart-shattering because the audience has seen this happen before. I don't sympathize with Jax because being sad perfectly redeems someone for being rude and an ass. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I sympathize because Jax is so close to having what they truly wanted, an actual human bond, only for the fear to take over and to mask it with this facade. It's almost scary to me. Sometimes people can be mean and they may have a justifiable reason, but they also may not. And if they don't, that's usually annoying. But in this case, watching this happen as a third-person spectator, I sympathize. I connect with that fear. I want Jax to be happy, and I'm emotionally invested when they get close, and I'm emotionally distraught when they let the opportunity go. This obviously also connects to the idea of ignoring one's true self after rejection, and masking femininity with traditional masculinity. I'm doing another air quote thing. Being masculine is being mean and cool and not caring. It also connects to Jax's parental issues and how they were always pinned as not being manly enough or acting too much like their father. It's why Jax is so fragile about their ego and wearing that maid outfit. This facade of ignoring their transness is a part of that fear of not being correct in society's eyes, something that many trans and queer people will understand. I want Jax to truly be, well, Jax, but they never will be. And that hurts. But fuck all of that again, thinking is hard, and it's a lot easier not to think. Jax is mean, so Jax is bad. Meano like mean, Meano like Jax. The reasoning isn't morally valid in a real-world first-person perspective, therefore it's bad writing. Morally dubious character can only mean the character itself is horrible. I am a very good critic. You are perfectly allowed to dislike Jax, or the finale, or the show, or whatever the fuck you want to, but so many of the critiques I've seen gone over feel so poor. Almost like people are refusing to actually engage with the show on a deeper level. And hey, I think that's actually fine. I don't want to command how people interact with art. That removes some of the nuance and purpose of the medium, but if you're not going to actually interact with the themes, or at least try to understand them, or just be blinded with what you want instead of what makes sense for a series and a narrative, don't pretend to critique the show on a deeper level. Just say it's not what you wanted and move on. There are a lot of things in this show that could probably appeal to me specifically more. Cain is easily my favorite character. Hell, probably one of my favorite fictional characters ever, but not once did I complain about him not having enough development or screen time, despite him having significantly less spotlight than every other character. I'm not saying this is a haha, I'm better than you type of thing. I'm saying it as a way to show that if the show focused entirely on Cain, that'd definitely appeal to me, but it wouldn't make for a good show, or at least a good way to showcase this narrative. And I understand that, which is why my criticism of the finale or the show as a whole isn't Cain should have been in more of it. I also don't, or at least didn't, like Zooble on my first watch of the series, but a complaint of mine wasn't I wish they weren't there or got no focus, because that would have been a very silly critique. They add to the overall story. There is stuff to say with them. Preferences, while they can be valid critiques, are not inherently valid critiques, and I feel like a lot of people should try and internalize that more. I believe a lot of the criticisms I've seen about the finale are made in bad faith, and people should think about what works for a story instead of what they personally want out of a story they made up in their minds. And while we can argue over this for centuries, I think that we can all, at the very least, all agree that this didn't have any of these issues.